Well, good morning. Happy Monday to everybody. I hope your weekend went well and you've got your palms in celebration of this week. Today we'll be looking at a different saint, a more current one, probably the most current other than Pope Paul VI, who we looked at last week. However, he's directly related and kind of was a student of his. So it makes sense that we look at Saint Pope John Paul II, otherwise known as Karol Wojtyła. The future Pope John Paul lived an unusually varied life before his priestly ordination. As a teen, he split stone at a quarry, wrote poetry, and supported a network that smuggled Jews to safety during the German occupation of Poland. As a young priest, he was the favorite with students at Lublin University, who flocked to his classes and joined him in camping, hiking, and canoeing trips. As the second youngest cardinal in the history of the church, he ran an informal office and celebrated holidays with Krakow actors. And then, therefore, it should be no surprise that he would redefine the traditional role and demeanor of the papacy by traveling extensively, continuing to enjoy outdoor activities, and take on a wide range of political and moral issues. As a high school student in his hometown of Wojtyła in southern Poland, Wojtyła impressed classmates by an intense way he would pray in church. It was a habit of deep meditation that remained with him for his whole life. Quote, "Even as a boy, he was exceptional," said Rafał Tacha, a neighbor who knew the young boy growing up. The Nazi takeover of Poland in September of 1939 meant an official end to religious training and cultural activities. But Wojtyła attended an underground university in Krakow and helped set up a clandestine theater group that performed in stores and homes within the city. In addition to the quarry, he worked in a chemical factory, experiences that would provide him with material for his poetry and papal writing on labor, especially within Poland, the labor movement. He participated in daily mass, spiritual exercises, Marian devotion, and Bible study. Friends said that when his father passed away in 1941, Karol knelt for 12 hours in prayer at his father's bedside. And soon after his father's death, however, he withdrew from the theatrical group and began studying for the priesthood, a decision that surprised many of his friends who tried to convince him that his talents lay in the theater. He studied in that clandestine seminary operated by Cardinal Adam Safia's in his Krakow residence in defiance of Nazi orders forbidding religious education. The archbishop saw him as a future church leader, yet the young Karol, who wrote poems and a doctoral dissertation on the mysticism of St. John of the Cross, was attracted to a monastic life of contemplation, and twice during these years he tried to join the displaced Carmelites, but was turned away with the advice, quote, "You are destined for greater things," end quote. He was ordained November 1st, 1946, just as the communist regime replaced the Germans at the end of World War II. Father Wojtyła was sent to study at Rome's Angelicum University, where he earned a doctorate in ethics. And back in Poland in 1948, the young priest was assigned to the rural village of Niekowice, a year before returning to Krakow. There at St. Florent Parish, he devoted much of his attention to young people, teaching, playing soccer, and inviting university students to his house for discussions. And after earning a second doctorate in moral theology, Father Wojtyła began teaching at Lublin University in 1953. Commuting by train from his Krakow parish, he published more than 100 articles and several books on ethics and other subjects, and at the age of 36 became full professor at the Institute of Ethics in Lublin. Father Wojtyła, his interest in outdoors activities still remained strong, and younger companions called him, quote, "the eternal teenager." Groups of students regularly joined him for hiking, skiing, bicycling, camping, and kayaking, accompanied by prayer, outdoor masses, and theological discussions. Father Wojtyła was on a kayaking trip in 1958 at the age of 38 when he was named an auxiliary bishop of Krakow. the youngest Polish bishop in the country's history. He continued to live a simple life, shunning the trappings that came with his position, for instance, and he only left his house in Krakow when friends moved his household furnishings to a new residence, and then he was forced to go there instead of making them angry. In 1964, shortly before the end of the Second Vatican Council, he was named Archbishop of Krakow. Just 3 years later, at the age of 47, he became a cardinal, but he continued his open approach in Krakow, seeing visitors without appointments and holding seminars at the cardinal's residence for actors, workers, students, priests, and nuns. In 1976, after touring several U.S. cities and attending the International Eucharistic Congress in Philadelphia, Cardinal Wojtyła attended a conference of Polish Americans at St. Mary's College in Orchard Lake, Michigan. True to form, having sat through a string of indoor meetings, one afternoon he canceled his session to go canoeing. Over the last several years of his pontificate, Pope John Paul II revealed an aspect of his personal life that he did not want history to overlook. In autobiographical books and selected talks, the pontiff emphasized that what kept him going was not the power of the papacy, but actually the spiritual strength that flowed from his priestly vocation. Quote, "With the passing of time, the most important and beautiful thing for me is that I have been a priest for more than 50 years, because every day I can celebrate Holy Mass." End quote. He told this to 300,000 young people in Italy in 1997. While many writers have encountered the Pope's early life as semi-political pilgrimage under Nazi occupation and communist domination in Poland, the Pope himself remembered those years as a crucial time of spiritual formation. In his 1996 book, A Gift and Mystery, he recalled how the sense of being called to the priesthood filled him with joy, but it also cut him off from acquaintances and other interests. In one of the most moving passages he wrote as Pope, he said he still feels a debt to friends who suffered, quote, "on the great altar of history during World War II while he studied in the clandestine seminary." A youthful 58, he was elected in 1978. Pope John Paul II experienced health problems early on. He was shot and almost killed in 1981 and spent several months in the hospital being treated for abdominal wounds and a blood infection. In later years, he suffered a dislocated shoulder, a broken thigh bone, arthritis of the knee, and an appendectomy. He had to stop walking in public in 2003 due to his illness, and he stopped celebrating public liturgies in 2004. In his later years, Pope John Paul II spoke with increasing frequency about his age, his failing health, and death. He was determined to stay at the helm of the Church, but also said he was prepared to be called into the next life. This is his quote: "It is wonderful to be able to give oneself to the very end for the sake of the kingdom of God. At the same time, I find great peace in thinking of the time when the Lord will call me from life to life," end quote. He said in a 1999 letter written to his world's elderly. The Pope continued, "And so I often find myself saying, with no trace of melancholy, a prayer recited by priests after the celebration of Eucharist." And this is the part of the prayer: "At the hour of my death, call me and bid me come to you." This is the prayer in Christian hope, he said. In the hours before his death in April 2005, prayers went up on the Pope's behalf from all over the world, from China to the Pope's native Poland, from Christians and non-Christians. Rabbi Riccardo di Sengi, the chief rabbi of Rome, came to St. Peter's Square just to pray for the Pope, saying he wanted to offer, quote, "a sign of participation with the Church." As the Pope lied dying, journalists who tried to enter the square were turned away unless they were coming to pray. The world's media arrived in unprecedented force, surrounding the Vatican with broadcasting trucks and film crews. A supplementary press office was prepared for the thousands of reporters expected to arrive for the Pope's funeral and conclave. Of course, the Vatican's website was overloaded soon after the Pope's situation took a turn for the worse, and the Vatican switchboard was jammed. Email messages also poured in, offering prayers and condolences. More than 25,000 people filled St. Peter's Square to pray for the dying Pope. The city of Rome announced plans to deal with the flood of visitors in Rome the days after the Pope's death. Bus lines were all rerouted directly to the Vatican from the train station and airport, and there was officially set up tents around the Vatican to provide assistance for pilgrims. When Pope John Paul II made his first public appearance after his election in 1978, he said, "Do not be afraid. Throw open the doors to Christ." This is recited by the Pope's vicar for Vatican City, who on the evening of his death stated, "This evening or tonight, Christ will throw open his doors to the Pope." Leading the recitation of the Rosary in St. Peter's Square at 9 p.m. April 1st, 2005, Archbishop Camisteri said, quote, "When one's father is suffering, his children suffer, and when he is dying, his children gather around him." The recitation of the Rosary, he said, was an expression of Catholics' love for the Pope and desire to be with him at the end of his life. In honor of the Pope, the Marian prayer followed the mysteries of light, 5 reflections on Jesus' life that John Paul II added to the traditional Rosary prayers in 2002. Polish Cardinal Zenion Grodzewski, prefect of the Congregation for Catholic Education, spoke to reporters near St. Peter's Square as the Rosary was about to begin. He said, quote, "Christ will provide for the Church, and let us hope that he will find a successor as strong as Pope John Paul II. He was truly a strong man, and I think it will be difficult to find someone with the kind of strength he demonstrated." As the crowd that evening gradually diminished throughout the night, a core group of about 2,000 young people spent the night in the square, singing and every once in a while breaking the chant, "John Paul II, John Paul II." Vatican spokesman Joaquin Walls said on April 2nd, 2005, the Pope was told the young people were there, and, quote, "He seemed to be referring to them when, in his words, he repeated several times to have said the following sentence, 'I have looked for you, now you have come to me, and I thank you.'" Following his death at 9:37 p.m. on April 2nd, 2005, hundreds of thousands of people filled St. Peter's Square and the surrounding streets, waiting more or less patiently to pay homage to him. The solemn, prayerful pomp of the ceremony to transfer the Pope's body from the Apostolic Palace to St. Peter's Basilica on April 4th was actually replaced by informality. It seemed that everyone got along, and expressions of simple piety as the public lined up to view the Pope's body. Hundreds of police officers volunteered, and every imaginable branch in Italian military was present, as well as Red Cross workers, civil protection volunteers. They kept order, handing out water and helping those who tired of waiting in line for hours. It just shows the type of atmosphere he, even in his death, created for the Catholics at that time. Here's some highlights. I just want to key things go over real quick that the Pope accomplished. He is recognized as helping to end communist rule in his native Poland and the rest of Europe. John Paul II attempted to improve the Catholic Church's relations with Judaism, Islam, and the Eastern Orthodox Church. He upheld the Church's teaching on such matters as the right to life, artificial contraception, the ordination of women, and a celibate clergy. And although he supported reforms of Second Vatican Council, he was often seen as a little more conservative in their interpretations. He's one of the most traveled world leaders in history, visiting 129 countries during his pontificate. As part of his special emphasis on the universal call to holiness, he beatified over 1,300 and canonized 483 people, more than the combined tally of his predecessors during the previous 5 centuries. Truly amazing. By the time of his death, he had named most of the College of Cardinals consecrated or co-consecrated many of the world's bishops and ordained many priests. John Paul II was the second longest serving pope in modern history after Pope Pius IX. Born in Poland, John Paul II was the first non-Italian since 16th century Pope Adrian VI. His cause for canonization commenced 1 month after his death, with the traditional 5-year waiting period waived. On 19 December 2009, he was proclaimed venerable by his successor, Pope Benedict, and was beatified on 1 May 2011, Divine Mercy Sunday, after the Congregation for the Causes of Saints attributed one miracle to his intercession, the healing of a French nun from Parkinson's disease. A second miracle was approved on 2 July 2013, confirmed by Pope Francis 2 days later. John Paul II was canonized on 27 April 2014, again Divine Mercy Sunday, together with John the 23rd. On September 11, 2014, Pope Francis added these 2 optional memorials to the worldwide general calendar of saints. It is traditional to celebrate the saints' feast days on the anniversary of their deaths. However, that of John Paul II, 22 October, is celebrated on the anniversary of his papal inauguration. Posthumously, he has been referred to by some Catholics as St. John Paul the Great, although that title has no official recognition. St. John Paul II the Great. Unbelievable man, did unbelievable things for the church, set up World Youth Day, affected God knows how many people. I think we are blessed to have him as